I mean, we had a kid who, I think he felt so convicted. He confessed that he had sex. He was like probably a freshman in high school at my school. They forced him to get on the intercom and tell the entire student body.
What?
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is terrible.
What?
This is insane.
That's not a crime.
No, well, the thing is I'm pretty sure it is. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that school's under some fire right now. But that's what it should be.
At the after school, they formed a human tunnel, and he had to run through while people punched and kicked him.
His dick. It was crazy. It was so wild. Yeah, it was wild. Oh my gosh.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
I'm Casey.
And we have a few things to talk about today, Casey. First, you got your eyes lasered. So how's that going?
It's going fantastic. I feel like a modern medical marvel right now.
Like you just got ocular implants like some superhero?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like we raised an android version of me and then just plucked out their eyes and dumped them in a ditch,
Nice.
What was that movie?
Dude,
The Island? You remember that?
I vaguely remember it. I definitely think I watched that at my youth pastor's apartment, maybe.
Gee whiz, that's a little racy for a youth pastor event.
I know. There's probably some scenes in there. There's a few people. They had a good group.
You sure you
of
weren't
high
being
school
groomed?
kids over. Yeah, I don't think so. But that's what everybody who's being groomed says. I wanted to touch his pee-pee. No, it's just kidding.
How does ScarJo make you feel? No, it was a crazy process. I was pretty nervous about it. Like I was definitely like I was shook up sitting in the chair on the way in. And I will say it's not a comfortable process, but it's not painful. It's like
it sounds awful. Explain it.
It's like
explain it for the
somebody
people.
taking the heel of their hand and just like pushing down on your eye super hard. Like that
your
part
eye
sucked.
open or closed? Does it feel like if someone pushed directly onto your eyeball, or like if you're closing your eye and someone put a bunch of pressure on it?
Well, open. So they like pry your lids open, like clockwork orange style, and then I'm guessing just based on what it felt like. There's some sort of a ring or something that they put down like over top of your eyeball, and they're like, hold still, don't blink. And so you're kind of like sitting there with this thing on there, and there's like this machine that like pushes down on it, and it's uncomfortable. I did not like it. And you do one eye at a time, so you get done with one, and you're like, oh god, I got to do one more. And then
they should have like a team of two, so you can do them both at the same time.
Right. Old Dr. Shaky Hands and his apprentice. But like after that, they do the actual lasering part, and it's weird because you can see the laser while it's doing its thing, which
is like
is
a blinky
really
laser,
strange.
or is it like a constant?
It's kind of like a constant, like it almost looks like a bunch of lasers in a cluster, and they're kind of just like moving around your eye and stuff. It was weird. They give you a Vicodin beforehand, so like after it was all done, we went home. I took like a 3-4 hour Vicodin nap. Woke up, felt pretty good. Dude, by that night, I felt fine. I mean, that was the end of the discomfort. Yeah, and I could like immediately see better than I think I've ever been able to see.
That must feel so weird, dude, to just be able to see better without glasses on. It's like when Spider-Man takes his glasses off after he gets bit by the radioactive spider.
Right. Yeah, I felt like Tobey Maguire doing jazz hands. But
before probably during his angsty scene where he had his swoopy bangs in Spider-Man 3.
Oh yeah. That's the Tobey Maguire for me.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Seabiscuit Tobey Maguire. I don't know if you've seen Seabiscuit, but
I have. That's a weird one to pick out of the lineup, but you like.
Dude, the only reason I ever saw
dainty.
Seabiscuit, Yeah, dainty. The only reason I ever saw Seabiscuit was because we had like for a family Christmas party, we did a swap, or a grab, or whatever, a Yankee swap. Everyone calls them different things. I don't know what you call them in the South or the Midwest, but um, I got Seabiscuit. So I went home that night and watched Seabiscuit on probably Christmas Eve or some shit until I fell asleep and Santa came and brought me some better movies than Seabiscuit.
The Island.
Yeah.
I feel like I watched Biscuit at some point, but I'm just not a fan of jockeys. Like, I don't know how you go into that profession. Like, what puts you in a place where you're like, I think I'm going to pursue jockey craft or whatever you call it.
Yeah, I feel similarly about like NASCAR. I know that's way more popular than watching horse racing. Well, maybe not. I mean, I don't know how many people watch the Kentucky Derby, but apparently that's like a very popular 5 minutes. And that's what I don't get is like these horse races are like they're so quick. I'm like when I finally learned like how this stuff worked, it's like, oh, we're going to a Kentucky Derby party. I'm like, oh, there's probably a bunch of races throughout the day. It's like, no, you just get drunk over a 4 hour period and then watch a 45-second horse race.
Yeah, I feel like the audience for horse racing is like degenerate gamblers, the strange horse girl that you knew from high school, and Saudi princes that just had a journalist chopped up.
Yeah, well, maybe. I'm not sure about that. Please connect that for me, actually. I'm not going to let you get off easy.
What was it Jamal Khashoggi? Khashoggi that the Saudi prince had murdered the journalist.
Okay.
This okay. So here's context. If this makes no sense,
Yeah,
I
it
was
makes no
just
sense.
talking to a a woman who was a flight attendant for, I forget, it was like United Arab Emirates airline of some sort, and she was saying that she did all these international flights and stuff. She said that one of the Saudi sheikhs has a like jumbo jet that he had built interior custom for his horses because they summer in
Oh,
like
no way.
England or something like that, and then they spend a bunch of time in the U.S. for the derbies and races and all of that kind of stuff. So literally got like a jumbo jet that he uses just as a horse trailer.
That's ridiculous. Okay. So
It's a
there's
different
one.
kind of money. It's
Yeah,
like,
no, that's fuck you money right there. It's insane. People with fuck you money are really aggravating to people like us.
yeah, it's like I don't really understand that kind of wealth, but I'm willing to try it.
Yeah, I'd give it a shot. I mean, what? Everybody thinks that they're the ones who would do it better. I'd be good at being rich.
3 weeks in, you'd be building a space rocket.
Yeah, I know. There's a point at which like there's a certain amount of money that no human alive is able to handle appropriately. And at that point you shouldn't, dare I say, oh my god, you shouldn't be allowed to make that much money. But their freedoms are being infringed upon. Oh god.
This is Marxism.
Yeah, I
Tucker told me this was happening.
it is true, dude. The second you talk about salary caps or whatever in this country, everyone's like, so you're a socialist. I mean, that might be true about me. I know that's not true about you, but it there I don't know how it's possible that we all can't just agree that there's a certain amount of money that just nobody needs to make. It seems it seems so fucking reasonable to me.
I feel like I understand it because it's like holding on to this hope that like someday that's going to be you, or like some form of that is going to be you. And by like limiting these like uber billionaire, world conquering corporation heads and stuff like that, that you're somehow like lessening your chance of ever not worrying how you're going to pay your mortgage this month or something like that. It's
They're
like,
just trying to make it big
I
in
need
crypto.
Jeff Bezos because I need hope. I don't want to work
Yeah,
at UPS.
that is the hope, man. That's the Lord and Savior Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. That's the hope, dude. They find your hope in those figures. I don't. I mean, I don't. It's weird. I mean, there's another way to look at it, which is the destruction of democracy and society is basically like in their wake. But that's just a different perspective, I guess.
It'll shift.
We'll see.
People are unwittingly putting the hurt on them right now because of the employment crisis.
Yeah,
So,
Amazon's like really having a hard, sad time about it. All I have to do is be like, all right, fine, fuck it. We'll pay you guys $20 an hour instead of 18. And then that'll solve their labor crisis. And Jeff
well,
Bezos will still put
that's how
rocket dicks into
economics
space.
works, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, I was thinking
You
about it
apply pressure until you get a bigger piece of the pie.
this week, dude. I was thinking about like, okay, so I worked on Saturday. I haven't worked a Saturday in years. And so I work for a retail company. I work in there, for the listeners, I work in the corporate setting, but Black Friday hits and we end up with a shitload of orders and our e-com. So a bunch of people from the office were like, we're all showing up on a Saturday to help out. And it felt weird. So having just Sunday off was a strange feeling. I haven't worked 6 days in a row in quite some time. And I'm sorry to any listener who works 6 days in a row and thinks I'm being a bitch right now, but I'm not used to it. And after working on Sunday, I was like, can you believe that? I was talking to my wife. I'm like, can you really believe like people used to work 7 days, like before labor unions, people didn't have days off at all. That was
Back
like,
when
that was the
people were
thing that they
truly
had to
free.
fight for. Yeah, I know. People want to shit on you. Before unions, people didn't get weekends. They had to fight tooth and nail to get one day off a week. That is so crazy, dude.
Yeah, it is. No, I don't know. I was watching. There's like a series that I don't know what channel it was originally on, but I've been watching it on YouTube called like the worst jobs of, you name it, Victorian England, or the worst jobs for working in the such and such fleet, and it's so insane, like what some of the things that people would do, with basically with no choice back then, like the fact, like kids working in coal mines and things like that. Like he goes over some of that type of stuff, and it's insane. And like how many of them were exposed to like really dangerous chemicals that eventually kill them.
Yeah. That's why when you watch old TV shows like Gunsmoke or whatever, and every ad is like, did you work in a factory? Do you have mesothelioma? It's like, because they know who they're talking to.
Yeah. Yeah, we're trending in a good direction. It's just not quite the arc
It's just
that
slow.
I think anybody was hoping for.
Yeah. It's just progress is a little slow. Oh my god, I just can't. It's just so funny to think about people having to fight for like, hey, can we just get a day off? Like, no, that's unreasonable. Like, you know what it made me think of too is how, and look, I'm not to be a shitty dad sympathizer, but thinking about like during that time, it's like, okay, you work 7 days a week. You show up, you go to your fucking factory and you pull a lever for 10, 11, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. You get home and your 6 kids are like all up in your business and you're just like that. I can see why at that point in history, dads would get home and be like, just shut the fuck up and leave me alone. And then those kids learned those poor behaviors from their dads. And then even though they got their 40-hour work week and maybe they were excited about overtime, right? That's how then overtime exists. They get to work it. They work that Saturday, they get time and a half, maybe Sunday, and they like taking in the extra money. But it's like they just learned to be a shitty dad from their shitty dad, but their shitty dad actually had a reason to be completely fucking miserable. And all they just had to like, they just learned poor behaviors and weren't really stuck in the same situation. And I think we're at a point now where people like, I don't know, most millennials I know are like way more chill than you hear. Everyone tells stories about their dads, maybe like having a bad day at work and coming home mad, or then you hear your dad talk about your grandpa and how bad that was or some shit like that when you were a kid. But I feel like you are seeing like that, like shitty, leave me alone kind of mentality break, even in people who I wouldn't argue are like, having a lot of conversations about the patriarchy or something like that, right? Even people who aren't like paying attention to that, people who don't think about things in those terms at all. They just work, they go home, they might even vote Republican, but they go home and they're just like want to hang out with their kids and play with them and have a good time. And I'm hopeful. If there's one thing that's slow, it's a slow change too, like better working conditions. But I think better dads is a thing now, maybe.
I think so. I think like the lowest common denominator of social pressure just keeps going up.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, oh no, you can't beat your wife anymore. Like we're not doing that anymore. Did you not hear?
Yeah.
Like, that's out now. It's like, but my dad is like, it doesn't matter. Okay. You can't punch your wife in the face.
Like,
and it's
even
trickling
with
in the right direction.
It's like, I know plenty of people who, even in theory, like maybe who aren't paying attention to the science that's out there on it, would be like, they might not verbally say that there's that's a wrong thing to do. Like no one should do that. But plenty, like the people I know who are parents, like, of course it still happens. Of course kids are still getting spanked, but it's happening way less. I mean, again, people I know who might not verbally say that you shouldn't, or it's actually verifiably wrong or morally problematic, aren't doing it anyway, because it's just like, maybe there's a higher level of empathy and you just look at your kids and you go, I just don't think I want to hit them. That's how I feel about it. When I look at my kids, even when they're being assholes, I'm like, I just don't want to hit them. That just feels shitty.
I feel like I would.
Yeah.
I feel like because I feel that way a lot of, like, I feel that way every time I go to Target. I'm like, I'd spank that kid.
The kid throwing a tantrum in the deodorant aisle. Yeah.
I'm all for it going away. That's why I can't be a parent, is because I don't know how to create consequences for being the worst. So
you just choose not to have kids. You're like, I'm not going to hit other people's kids, so that's fine. We're good there. I just won't have my own, and therefore I don't have to deal with it.
God wouldn't give you a temptation that you didn't have the ability to withstand.
Yeah,
and so that's why I'm
one thing we learned.
Barren.
Yeah.
So if you're not in the Discord, you should join in, because we've been a little hit and miss with it at times, but there's some funny stuff that gets posted in there. We were talking about Noah's Ark this week, like that whole story of Noah, which we've harped on a little bit here, and I was trying to recount like the way the story goes, because okay, give me the context. Like, what was the rainbow in that story? Wasn't it like God's promise to not destroy the earth with a flood again?
Yep, that's what the rainbow is, until the gays took it. Those
right,
devious gays. How could they?
I mean, they're the reason that God flooded the earth in the first place.
Yeah.
At least that's what my church thought.
Rampant homosexuality. No, that's why God smited Sodom and turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt. Don't worry.
Yeah,
it's
that was
all
a fun story. They always made sure to have an illustration of that story somewhere in the picture Bible for kids,
Yeah, pillar of salt. That's fun to animate.
I was thinking about that, though, and I was thinking, like, man, the rainbow is like God basically saying, like, hey, now I'm not saying I'm wrong. I will not say I'm wrong, but I know that was a lot. And I promise not to do it again until someday when I do it again.
Not by water, though. That dude, I love that. The funniest fucking thing was, I remember having conversations around like Revelation and shit with my family, and it's like, you're talking about the Noah story, and they're like, look, the rainbow is a beautiful symbol of God's promise to never destroy the earth again by water, because we're getting burned to fucking death in Armageddon, kids. Like, this is happening. Fire's going to rain down from heaven. Everyone's going to be fucking dead. It's going to purify the earth with fire and brimstone. And then out of that, a new earth is going to be reborn. And all of us who were saved, if you get saved and accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior right now, I know you're only 5 years old, but do that. And then you will come back to inherit this earth. and it'll be beautiful, and it won't be destroyed ever again by fire or water. But don't
He's
count
just
out
slowly checking
earthquakes
them off.
or famine or
Lord, you're going a little heavy on the brimstone, aren't you? Like, can we try something else? He's like, my hands are tied. I am nothing if not a man of my word.
Yeah, I know. Oh shit! I said I would never destroy the earth again by water. By water? I didn't say fire, kids. You're like, okay, God, nice one.
Yeah, that is a story full of really interesting points when you pick through it as an adult.
Yeah, the little version, the Sunday school version of it, you get it. It tries to make God morally superior in that story, and I think he comes across as a bit of a dick.
Can you imagine like being Noah sitting in this boat with no windows in it, with a whole bunch of farm animals just like farting and just the worst, right? The worst possible context. You're in a closet with
And
a bunch
dinosaurs.
of beasts and dinosaurs. And dinosaurs.
Well, maybe just
Meanwhile,
the eggs. I don't know.
You're trying to pray and thank God for saving you, but like you can barely think straight because of throngs of people are banging on the outside of the boat, screaming for you to let them.
As like the water rises an inch an hour, and they're just like absolutely screaming for their lives for you to let them in. And they're like, well, you should have repented about 6 hours ago, bitch. Sorry. You're
It's
about
like
to
Joel
get
Osteen in the
lungs full of
Superdome.
water. Yeah, exactly.
He didn't have PTSD. He's doing fine.
Yeah. Also, I think it's worth mentioning the irony of like Answers in Genesis trying to rationally explain how all the animals of every kind could fit on an ark in a story where the entire globe floods and the ark lands on a magic mountain and all the water disappears and a small little family restarts all of humanity. Like how all the animals fit is where rationality starts and how you try to make that work.
Yeah. And then you get to the fact that like it's only one family that we're starting from here. Like, how does that genetic tree track? Yeah.
It's clunky. Oh, it's a clunky tree. Now, granted, the same thing was with Adam and Eve, right? One family starts it all, and they all live to 900 years old and have 10,000 children, and that's how they populated the earth.
It's like the Bible's no fun if you're gonna nitpick, brother.
Yeah, they're like,
I was
come
thinking
on.
about somebody. I was having a conversation about this as like one of the points of like one of the things that I looked, that as I started to exit Christianity, I looked at and I'm like, I can't make sense of this. And the person I was talking to was like a young Earth creationist, was like 6,000 years old and stuff like that. And I was like, look, dude, just think about this, okay? The whole is destroyed. The only animals that survive are on this boat, and they're all getting off the boat at the same point. I was like, you look at like one species like the gray wolf. The gray wolf is everywhere, or at least it was until we kind of stomped on them here, especially. But there's gray wolves in like Europe, America, all throughout Russia. I mean, at the prime of their existence, they were basically on like 6 out of 7 continents or whatever, right? They all had to come from this one point 6,000 years ago. It's like, well, but they migrate outwards. Okay, but they migrate outwards only at the pace that their food sources migrate outwards. Like, if there's no rabbits and deer in Russia for them to eat, then they can't go to Russia because there's no way to sustain themselves. It's like this whole thing has to spring out from this one little beach in like Turkey or whatever it was, Mount Ararat. Isn't that where they said the ark is?
Ararat, I think.
Ararat. I always
remember
pronounce
that.
every word wrong.
Yeah.
But
because you only
like,
read them and never hear anybody else say them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was one of those revelations right there, just like Ararat. Okay. But yeah, he's like, well, look, man, if you believe that God sent his only son to die for your sins, to, forgive you and redeem you and all this stuff, then like, if you believe in that, then a lot of this other stuff, it's nothing in comparison. And I'm like, that's not That's not helping, man. Like,
Yeah, I don't even see the connection, to be honest. I'm not sure, like, because that's so much less plausible that it's therefore makes sense that all the wolves on every continent. Because isn't that? I don't know if this is a correct assumption. I might be misremembering, but isn't that the creationist explanation for continents? It was all in one, and then after the flood, there was that everything was in separate continents now. Or do they believe in
like
the whole
it's
like
the land between puddles.
yeah yeah? I don't what I forget what
I
it
feel
was
like
called. What
I heard that thrown around a little bit.
okay? What do they call it before all the plates shifted and continents broke up? There's a word for what?
Pangea.
Yeah, Pangea. That's what they. That's like what? Just a theory, more or less. It stands to reason that there used to it all was one place because before we had boats to get across the ocean, there were people on every continent. So unless everyone evolved independently of each other on separate continents, which doesn't seem to be the case, but that's what was fun. Dude, I always had that question as a kid. We got to wrap this up and introduce our guest in a second. But while we're on the topic, I don't want to not talk about this because I bet most people had this question. Is I remember asking as a child, like, okay, so if there were continents, and when people came to the United States, there were Native Americans here, or First Nations, or whatever, but people who lived here first, right? So when Jesus died and rose again and saved us from our sins, but you have to know about it, and you got to know Him, and you got to confess that you do. That kind of fucked shit up for those people for a good 1,500 years. Like, I mean, Native Americans just died. Anyone in the Americas just died constantly without ever hearing about Jesus. And it's
I
like,
feel
do
like the
they all go to
Mormons
hell?
fixed this problem though,
Yes. And that's
because they had
it
like
doesn't not
the
make sense
other.
when you think about that. Like those questions, like that's a big moral failure for God who sent his son to die for the world's sins to just conveniently leave out half of the fucking world. And Mormons are like, we can fix this for you, God. I think
It
this is
was Jews.
yeah. It was Jews. Yeah. Okay. They tried their best. They fucked it a little bit. They really screwed the pooch a little bit. Is that a
Yeah,
saying we can never retire? Please screw the pooch. You'll
I mean, Michael
well-meaning
Scott
Southern
said it.
Baptists will say screw the pooch, and you're like, you fuck a dog. It's you just it's not a good saying.
Yeah, well, and again, family history, I guess.
Yeah, dog fuckers that's their family history.
So, this week we have a very interesting guest.
So much
So,
fun.
yeah, this was a fun episode and a little different than some of the others that we've done recently. Um, our guest today is a musician. He's a producer. He's an artist. He's an influencer. He's even got an
A poet.
OnlyFans. He is a guy who wears a lot of hats, literally and figuratively. And his name's Jesse Cale. I found out about Jesse from a friend of mine who went to a big church in Ohio, I think it was. And Jesse was a worship leader there, sort of got disenchanted with Christianity and kind of set out on his own spiritual journey. But he's a really interesting guy that's done a lot of really cool things. And we had a great time talking to him. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I loved it because he's one of those people that takes you on a ride. He's got plenty of stories. I feel like there's so much that we missed out on that we could like there's no way he doesn't have I mean, he talked about having plenty of other lists, but he talks about the stuff that I don't necessarily find myself believing in so much anymore, whether it's like miracles and all this like stars aligning kind of things. But I guess the best way that I've been able to put it is when you stop believing in certain things, like, but you hear someone talk about it so well and so interestingly and so passionately, and also I believe him when he says the things that he says. That I'm like, what the fuck? I don't even know how to make sense of that. Like you're just taking on this journey with the stories, and it's like ghost stories, right? I don't believe in ghosts. Like on paper, right? But if I sit in a room with people who tell some really good fucking ghost stories, I believe in ghosts when they're telling me that story. And for a while after, like, and it uproots. And I guess I know you want to go back to our Christian roots, and that's where you put all that emphasis on the power of your testimony, right? But but in all honesty, when you hear good ghost stories, you're along for that ride and you love it, even if you don't believe in ghosts. So whether you are a listener who believes in the spiritual or not, or mysterious happenings and forms of miracles or doesn't, this guy's he's got a fun take on it all, and an incredibly fun story. And I don't know, I'm so excited. I've been really excited about putting this episode out there, so I don't need to blabber on any longer. You can take it from here. Close us out.
So
do your thing, Casey.
definitely after the episode, go check out Jesse's music. He's got a couple of different projects out there. He does like visual art, stuff like that. Follow him on social media and everything, and enjoy our conversation with Jesse Cale. 'Tis the season to be jolly, and nothing makes me more jolly than a great cup of coffee. You know what I'm talking about?
I certainly do, Casey.
So my house this time of year, I turn the heat down at night because I like it to be like a frosty 66. And waking up in the morning, stepping out into the kitchen at 5:30, it's chilly.
You got your long underwear on. You got the flap open in the back, all unbuttoned with your little booty hanging out.
Rosy cheeks, 2 sets, top and bottom.
They look freshly spanked, but it's just getting cold.
My poor pets. Nothing wakes me up better than a cup of hot Captain Cecil's coffee. And, during the fall, I was really into the Knobsk blend. I just got a new shipment in, and I gotta say, the limited edition holiday blend is fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I gotta say must be amateur hour in here, because you talked about it being a frosty 66, and I set my thermostat to a frosty 62.
That's like a Siberian gulag.
It's cold. You wake up in the morning and you don't want to get out of bed, but you have to. Get your pot of coffee going, and of course, I'm drinking Captain Cecil's. Captain Cecil's donates 10% of all sales to various lighthouse preservation organizations across New England. It's one way for them to make sure that they remain with us for generations. And as a New Englander, that's super important. Lighthouses around here, big deal. They're landmarks. And I know you don't know anything about lighthouses because you don't have them. You just have windmills, the lighthouses of the Midwest.
Yeah, we have like grain elevators. Not quite as scenic, but same thing.
Yeah. Now's the time to pick yourself up some Captain Cecil's coffee. It's a 20% off Black Friday sale, which is going to kick off a 10% off sale for the rest of the month. Great gifts for the coffee lovers in your family. It's absolutely some of the best coffee you'll be able to get your hands on.
So head over to CaptainCecilsCoffee.com and get some of those delicious beans headed your way. That's CaptainCecilsCoffee.com. Tell them your buddies at Growing Up Christian sent you. And we're back with our guest, musician, social media influencer. Boy, what else would you put on your rap sheet, Jesse?
Man, I've got one of those resumes that I call the MTM resume. It's the multi-talent millennial, where it's like, grandma calls you and she's like, "Hey, can you fix my iPad?" And I'm like, "Grandma, you have an iPad?"
Yeah.
But it's just like, "Hey, can you edit this video for me?" It's like, "Sure." "Can you shoot this video? Can you build a website? Can you do the back end of my business? Can you, or whatever." So just all around, been surrounding myself with tools of creative self-expression. So whether it's, making photography, videos, poetry, music, just kind of the intersection of the birth of this accessible technology. So doing all that, yeah.
Dude, my wife's kind of like internet personality, cosplayer, that sort of thing. And it's like an old person from work will be like, "So what does your wife do if you don't have any children?" And I'm like,
wow.
I don't know how to. She's on the internet. How about that?
Yeah. Something that's impossible for them to understand.
Oh,
there's no hope in even trying to explain to them what it is that is. It won't compute.
So The reason that I know about you is a friend of mine who went to a church that you were a part of. He said that you were a big part of their worship program, and then left and kind of gone on like a spiritual journey and stuff like that. Why don't we just start off by give us a little background on Jesse Cale, how you grew up, where you're from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I was born and raised here. I have left here a few times, and I'm currently back here at the moment. My church background is I was born into an empowered evangelical home.
Empowered.
Empowered
What is empowered?
evangelical.
Even that's a subset of evangelicalism. I'm not super familiar with. I guess
Sounds like there's
Empowered.
tongues involved.
Yeah.
Yes,
Maybe
yes,
a snake or two.
It was basically the my state of normalcy was my parents having a kinship, or what they call a home group or whatever, and my dad's casting demons out of people in the living room while my
Oh,
mom's
shit.
healing people in the kitchen, kind of thing. And I'm
We're
just like a
looking
little
for someone
child.
to come cast demons out of us on the podcast. We found a couple on TikTok that are really good at it, and we want to see if they want to come on.
That's
Maybe
fascinating.
cast the
That's
demons out of us.
so awesome. I love
Dude,
that.
I've found in the last couple of weeks, I've found that there's an entire community of demon caster outers on TikTok, and their videos are wild.
Yeah, it's that's one thing that I love about TikTok is you could be into anything. You could be into like a specific type of illustration, and you will find a million people that are just like, yeah, I make videos specifically in this style or on this subject, casting demons out of people, I don't know, astral projection, like whatever. And there's a community around everything on TikTok. You just have to dig it, and then the algorithm just feeds it to you.
It's true.
Dude, it's funny, like growing up in church and stuff, like you're almost like you're not allowed to watch horror movies, but you do occasionally get to hear a demon story from someone, and it sort of like fills that gap.
My God.
Was that like terrifying as a kid to be like in the same room as that?
Yeah, it was like, well, what was really amazing about it, and something that I've carried with me post Christianity, is a spiritual sense of authority,
Okay.
and
Interesting. Do
and
tell.
it was, well, how it's like you always hear it's like just call on Jesus' name, and like Jesus is the boss, and Jesus will show up and kind of trump any type of evil. That was kind of just the simplicity of the message, and like carrying that with me, like as I kind of it just made me, I guess, less afraid of what was beyond Christianity and more curious.
Okay.
Kind of having that sort of foundational sense of safety with that, I guess that came from a behavior of spiritual authority, quote unquote.
Interesting.
I guess.
It sounds like
the
that,
confidence of
backfired
knowing
on
that
you.
you're the spiritual swinging dong in every room.
I mean, I guess that, but maybe a little less like masculine and more just kind of like, curious kid just kind of wandering in like, oh, this is fun, right? Everybody's having a good time. It's just like whatever. But yes, that.
That's an interesting way of putting it, though. I don't feel like I've ever heard anybody describe it quite that way, but like, more of a curiosity than a fear, because you feel like a sense of security.
Yes.
in your belief.
Absolutely. I mean, and security is foundational in any type of honest experience,
Sure.
So yeah. Growing up with that, so going back to where we were just coming from,
Yeah.
I love the every now and then you'd hear a demon story. That was your taste of horror as a child. And yeah, there were times when it was scary, especially when it was, you'd go to like church camp, and that's when church camp things would get radical. Kids are getting slain in the spirit, and somebody's running around in the field outside, and you're like, oh, they got a demon, or did they just have too much sugar? Like, what is going on?
It's all of the above. It's one part exhaustion, 2 parts like no authority figure.
Yes.
There's a lot of similarities between being slain in the spirit and having a demon exercised when it comes to the behaviors that you exude. So you
I mean,
absolutely on which
absolutely.
one's happening.
And it's funny, is like you see the same exact type of behaviors happen across like so many cults, other religions, groups, kind of in some kind of sync, in sync with each other, there will be these kind of radical, manifestations of physical behaviors and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's been interesting recontextualizing all of my childhood and experiences with Christianity and the Holy Spirit and all of these things since having my divorce, I guess.
Yeah, I want to. We can revisit it a little bit later when we kind of get to that part of your story. But I am interested in how you, because that's what's weird about that. Like most evangelicals, I feel like if you don't come from a charismatic tradition, it's pretty bland. Not a lot is happening on a Sunday morning. Maybe a
Right.
couple of hands go up, a few offbeat claps from your middle-aged white people in the room, and then that. But so when you leave that, you're like, yeah, I just left it. But when you have all those like experiences that feel genuine, authentic, like feels like you're really experiencing spiritual realm of some sort. The way everyone looks back on it after they leave is often different in what they were experiencing, what they think they're seeing. So, I guess it's so I don't know. I don't want to forget it later, but we'll get more into like your deconstruction later. But like what is that to you? Like when you look back on those experiences as a kid?
Yeah, totally. That's really funny you mentioned that. I tend to, when I talk to a lot of people that are in a state of like deconstruction and post Christianity and all of that, like, I always forget that I had this fairly unique experience with both of my parents being as involved as they were, and my mom eventually becoming a pastor of a mega church, and just having this very expressive, emotional, incredible father. So going into what became kind of my every Sunday and youth group was, people waving around banners, people throwing their hands up, falling on the ground, shaking and speaking in tongues and prophesying. And that was kind of, with evangelical, I don't even know, like they would, always encourage us, obviously, to tell people about Jesus, but also kind of like concurrent to that was like also prophesy and speak in tongues and practice all these gifts and things like that. And I honestly felt more comfortable trying to prophesy over people than telling them about Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I was like, if I can read their mind or predict the future, then when I say Jesus was like the one that helped me do that or whatever, I was just a tool for that, then I feel like that's the easy part. But just coming with just Jesus, I was like, how's that convincing?
Yeah, dude. With prophesying, there's such a you can do it vague. So I actually like I went through a phase of the charismatic stuff in college. I never like did the tongues. Like there were lines that I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm there, but I remember the first time I was in this prayer group and everyone's like really into it. Some people are convulsing and someone puts their hand on me. There's a big circle and he's like, I feel like Jesus is giving you a word for me, Sam. I want you to speak Jesus' word over me. And I was just like, fuck.
Is that the one?
Hey, no pressure.
We do like a multiple choice sort of thing.
Right.
I felt like I was so full of shit the whole time, and I just start saying whatever the fuck comes to my mind. And afterwards, he's like, "That's it. That's what I need to hear." I was like, I don't know if any of this is for me, actually. That's what I was like, this feels a little much for me.
Incredible. I love that. I love that pressure.
Apparently I do good at when I have to make a game time decision on that stuff, but
yeah,
I might be able to muster that up again if I needed to.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I feel like sometimes when that happens, it forces you to just go with your first instinct. And when we think too much about it, that's when it becomes ours and we try to own it. And that's not what's taking place. It is kind of like a reception and giving of something that has way less to do with our brains. So
yeah.
At least in where I am now in my experience. So we'll get into that later. But yeah, that's funny. You can be super vague. Somebody will be like, banana, and then somebody in the back of the room starts crying and they're like, oh, yeah. They're just like, that was it, that was the one.
I feel like if I totally surrendered to that inner voice, it would probably just be like deep storage radio jingles or something.
Yeah.
It'd be like, you got a word for me? I'd be like, Save big money at Menards.
You never know. You never know. Maybe someone. Oh man, it's so odd. I've got some really strange stories for later to get into. Kind of surrendering to that inner voice, just no matter
Yeah.
how ridiculous it is, and how honestly life changing it can be.
But all right, let's
scoot along.
Yeah, let's roll along with. All right, so we've already derailed you. Just all you've talked about is having a dad who would do the whole prophecy. You cast out demons in your kitchen.
Yeah.
But let's all right. So
Where
back
do
to how
you fit
grew
into
up.
all that?
Yeah.
So I was born at one point, and no. So
Yeah,
I got into. Oh man, I heard this Christian artist named Joy Electric when I was 6 years old. Oh my god, 6 years old. The song like monosynth comes on. There's a local Christian radio station here called Radio U. It comes on, and I just like full body react to it. I was like, I don't know what all these crazy sounds are, but this is what I want to do with my life, is grow up and play synthesizers. And I didn't know they were synthesizers at the time. I was like, I know this is a keyboard, but it's some kind of special one. There was no way for me to like Google it or look it up. I just had to kind of ask a lot of questions. And being a Christian kid in the Midwest who was 6, there was a lot for me to grasp onto. But I started piano lessons and got my first keyboard, and was going to church with my family. And man, I loved Jesus so much. I had my first experience of being healed when I was 4 years old. I had a big weight. I was playing with like my dad's weight set in the basement, and a big, it was a 45-pound plate. Was sitting on the couch, and I was just like discovering inertia, and I was pushing it into the cushion, and it would pop up, and I just kept doing it in a rhythm that it kept flying higher and higher. And then eventually it slid to the end of the couch and came down and like crushed my big toe against like the cement floor.
Oof.
Because it was rough. Then my mom just comes running downstairs, lays hands on it, she prays, and pain immediately goes away, color comes back, and I was fine. I just get up and I was like, cool. And to me, that was just this like, solidifying moment that like, okay, there is some power, And to me, the context of that experience was, we were a very poor, nothing. There was nothing terribly special about our family except for that just we loved each other. And my mom, asked the God of the Bible in that moment to heal her son. And that just was like, okay, God is willing to listen to this Midwest mom, where that's, just doing her best to take care of her family. And God loves me enough to heal me, the little 4-year-old kid that's doesn't have any type of track record except for curiosity and whatever. And then, I don't know, started seeing ghosts and things when I was 6. So,
Whoa.
but to me, it was normal. I was just like, oh yeah, this is probably this demon my dad cast out of somebody or whatever. It's just shows up in my room, scared the crap out of me. But like, I was just kind of like, okay, I had that experience,
That is a subject, surprisingly, we have not touched on at all, I don't think. In our 50-some episodes is ghosts.
We're gonna.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just being funny. But so then, get more involved. I start making my own electronic music. And I remember being 11 years old, and I was homeschooled until 6th grade. I went to a private Christian school from 6th to 9th grade. And I remember being in 6th grade, showing up, like thinking everybody was making art and music and stuff. And I had little tapes of my experimental electronic music, and I'm trying to like hustle. I'm like, hey man, I'm going through puberty, but like, do you want to buy my electronic music tape? And they're like, what? I'm picking my nose. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
They're all wearing
2 hours of Joy Electric covers.
Essentially, yes, man. Oh my God. So yeah, man, life goes on. I get to, the first day of my sophomore year at said Christian school, and I am so excited to like reunion with one of my friends, Brad. and I accidentally knock over Brad's soda that he's drinking, and this kid across the table calls me an idiot. And I said, "Hey, man, don't be an ass." Well, there was a teacher who overheard me say the word
Whoa.
ass,
A word.
and I got suspended.
Whoa!
And so I immediately went home and told my parents, and we unenrolled me from that school because that's absurd. And
That's wild. A kid calls you an idiot, and you say ass, and you're like, "That's the bad word there." Like,
yeah,
really?
that was generally the experience at that school. You know, it was like everybody, we'd all be like screwing around, and then a teacher comes in and be like, "Who's screwing around?" And I've always had this just deep conviction of honesty. Like, if I am living in any sort of departure from the truth, I feel disgusting. So I like, of course, she's like, "Who's screwing around?" I'm like always the first person to like raise my hand, and I would always be the only one that got in trouble because it would be like everybody else would just hide, and I'm like, but even though she was clearly watching us all mess around for him, I'm just like, okay,
Just
cool, punish
admitting
me
it's
for being honest.
Draconian laws really reward the honest kid, for
It's
sure.
so funny, man.
Say what you will. One thing that we have to give them credit for, we know now that mandatory minimums work absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, so gosh, then
So you're still like, as you're in Christian school, you're in high school, like you're invested in the Christian thing. Like,
so deep.
Okay.
It was like the idea of not being a Christian like never crossed my mind. I loved Jesus so much, and I had this very palpable, tangible, sweet spiritual life of just like, praying and seeing like almost responses from, the universe, and it just felt wonderful. It felt romantic. I would get like shivers in my spine every time I started praying. It was just like this really wonderful thing. And then as I went on, I realized, I was like, I feel like I'm experiencing a light that is different than the one that people are experiencing here. In fact, I don't think a lot of these people even have the same kind of light on. It was just this weird kind of experience as I got older. But then I started playing keyboards in the church like all the time. It was like most services, and gosh, that was from ages like 17 till, man, honestly, like 25.
yeah.
So it was for a while. I spent 2 years of that though living in California. So I had gotten a job. Do you guys remember the Christian rapper John Rubin?
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Oh, absolutely.
So I was John
That's
Rubin's
your
keyboard player.
hometown boy.
Yeah.
That's sick, dude.
So
From
I
the
was
land of corn, Columbus, Ohio. That's where he was
where I was born in. Yeah, man. So I was John's keyboard player for a little bit.
Where did you get that gig?
It's
Was
funny.
that like out of high school?
So I got that. Gosh, I was like 19. So there was another goatee recording artist named Jeff Anderson, and he came and became the worship leader at my church. We started a band called Anderson Cale that was like a Christian Sigur Rós, and just ambient instrumental post rock, really big. Like oh god, I loved it. It was so fun. And then we needed to record some drums, so we went to go record at John's house because John was like tight in that community, and he had a studio in his back. And then he just like was like, "Hey, you're in that." I was also in an electronic pop Christian pop duo called Fantastic, and we weren't around too long, but we made a little noise while we were. And so John hit me up when he needed a keyboard player. Or his drummer Seth hit me up when they needed a keyboard player. But yeah, so I was about 19 when I started doing that. That was fun.
That's cool. That was kind of, you did that for a bit right out of high school, kind of like basically. You didn't really...
Yeah. You went out of there and started doing that, touring, playing with all those Christian bands, 1,000 Foot Crutch and whatever, Skillet. I don't know.
we can nerd out on Christian rock bands and stuff pretty hard.
Oh,
what were some of the ones that you got that you got to hang out with and spend time with when you were doing all that?
Oh man. Well, you know what? I became really close with the Family Force 5 guys.
Cool.
Really?
Yeah.
They're
So
always
I'm
silly.
actually,
Everybody's like a silly group of dudes, huh?
so fun, like really sweet, loving, fun, creative, funny, like just a blast. The front man Solomon and I were, this is getting to that story. I was John Rubin's keyboard player, uh and yeah, got to meet and hang with like a few Christian acts. But then John's brother Danny started a company called Maker Studios that produced YouTube artists and managed YouTube channels and all of this stuff. John then quit the rapping thing for a little bit, or like just put it on pause, went to work for his brother, and then they brought me along to produce music. So I moved out to LA with John and produced music for a bunch of YouTube channels.
That's cool.
And then and John would always bring out like, you know, his homies to work on, you know, various comedy songs and stuff like that. So he brought out Solomon from Family Force 5, and him and I got really close. And it's just a fun little weird time period. But that was like a 2-year gap where I wasn't, you know, playing in church. I was church hopping the whole time I lived in LA, crying out to God for a community, and never got one.
Really?
So very lonely 2 years. And it was funny because I would find small groups and I would show up and they'd be like prayer requests. And I would be like, I'm drinking a lot and I'm really depressed. And other people would be like, I'm getting new headshots taken tomorrow. And then, you know, and I'm not kidding. That's honestly how it was. And it was such a bummer because people got really put off by my honesty and just how like genuinely I was looking for community, like because I was used to, you know, a communion that looked like, or a community that looked very Midwestern, where it was like friends and family, and out there it was very like, you know, career driven, and which is fine. It's just a different, you know, different social and different culture.
Kind of like a whoa, hey, don't come in here with your problems. Talking negative. You're being a downer.
Oh man, I went to a church out there. It was so funny. I went up there and I was like, hey, I've been looking at a lot of porn. I think I'm an alcoholic and it's killing me. And they completely blew over the alcoholic, it's killing me part and just went straight to we got to pray for your porn problem, man. I was like, I said, I sometimes look at porn, but I'm dying from drinking too much. I mean, maybe it's so funny. Oh God, goofy.
There's like such like anything sexuality based is like, it's so offensive to that community. Like they're so put off by it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's funny as you get older, because I remember like, you know, just like you know, talking about like jerking off, like you think you're like the only one that's ever done that. You're disgusting. You're like, you're on the path to being a serial killer or something. And then like the older you get, the more you realize like, oh, everybody's done this probably a lot. And those people are just liars.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just cast in the first stone here, you know?
Mm-hmm. Ugh, so heartbreaking. Especially trying to like talking to so many people. I feel like one of the most common conversations is just how damaging to like sex and, you know, healthy like sex life and anything in that like area is just totally damaged by the amount of shame and guilt and conviction of just starting so young in the church.
Yeah, it starts so young. Like pre-puberty, they start drilling that into your head, so that way by the time you get your first boner, you can feel bad about it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so sad I have a boner. But then always the pastor is always like,
this is gonna happen someday. I just didn't think it'd be today.
It's me. Oh God, go running out of the church. Oh, set my dick on fire, somebody please. And the pastor's always talking about like, I love sex, but you gotta wait. My smoking hot wife and I totally have sex because we're married. And it's just like, what the hell? And then also just being asked about your sex life when you're like 13 or 14 by like church leaders, that's a big question.
Oh, no one ever asked me about it.
Oh man, going to we had a
park
kid in
there for a moment. Holy shit, that sounds weird.
Right. We had a kid who, you know, I think he felt so convicted. He confessed that he had sex. He was like probably a freshman in high school at my school. They forced him to get on the intercom and tell the entire student body.
What?
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is terrible.
What?
This is insane.
That's not a crime.
No, well, the thing is I'm pretty sure it is. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that school's under some fire right now, but that's
And
what
then
it should be.
after school, they formed a human tunnel, and he had to run through while people punched and kicked
Punched
him.
his
And
dick. It was crazy. It was so wild. Yeah, it was wild. Oh my gosh. Yeah, our sex ed looked like, not educational, simply just sex is bad, don't do it. And if you have a boner, well, no. Oh my gosh, the best. This was actually something my teacher said boys can't get boners till they're 18. But meanwhile, I was 13 in class with one of those like no actual reason boners. I'm just sitting there just like, we're talking about sex, so I'm just kind of like, ugh. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be getting boners yet? What's happening?
You're just sitting, chilling with a fem dog, hanging. Like, what's going on? I don't.
Help, teacher, help!
God, I wish Jankos were still in style.
Oh, see, we had uniforms, so. Oh man.
Oh, so your Christian school, I gotta ask, like, do you remember what curriculum they used? Was it like traditional school structure with classes, or did you guys have like the weird homeschool curriculum?
You know what? I don't totally remember because I was only there from 6th to 9th grade. And I'm so grateful for what that school provided for me because, like I said, I went from homeschooling and most of my social life was kids in my neighborhood, sports, because I would play soccer at a local rec, and then church on the weekends. And then getting to kind of experience a social structure in a safe environment. Like the kind of Christian school it was something I was grateful for. I mean, it was obviously not ideal, but there was some goodness to it. And I met so many people that I'm still like so close with today. So
that's
awesome.
an interesting way to look at it. It's almost like it was like a halfway house between.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
That was Liberty for me.
Yeah, I went.
What's the medication? What's the stuff they give you when you're trying to come off like heroin and stuff like that? It's like a giant.
Oh yeah, I don't.
Methadone.
Yeah, it's like methadone. Perfect. Mm-hmm. It was like the methadone of safety
my socializing methadone. And then I went straight from there. It was funny because saying the word ass greatly changed my life. It led me to doing music full time because basically I was having like I was saying when I was 11, I was trying to sell my weird experimental electronic music to kids. But by the time I was 15, and first year sophomore in high school, I was starting to play at bars just with a bunch of stacks of synthesizers playing weird electronic pop music. But I was also like, I wanted to play soccer for my life. I loved soccer. And then got suspended from school, quit the school, soccer went out the window. And then I was like, all right, looks like I'm just going to do music all the time. So I can thank the word ass. The first successful song I ever wrote that like got me my job in Los Angeles was called Tiggle Bitties. So my biography is going to be called Acid Titties Changed My Life.
There you go. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Where'd you go after you got after you unenrolled from that school? Did you go to another Christian school, public school?
Online. It was the very beginning of online school. So it was like this archaic, just like, uploading files and Word documents. It's just this whole cluster because it was like the very beginning of it. And so what was awful of me, oh my gosh, you can hear my cat crying, buddy, I love you, his name's Crybaby.
Crybaby.
I could just email the teacher and wow, here's something we could talk about with growing up Christian. I would email the teacher and be like, we're having problems at home, I can't turn in any assignments, and they'd be like, just no worry about it, it's just this total lie.
Oh my god.
But like I would only have to turn in assignments like once every 3 months. So just like turn in everything at once and whatever.
That's unreal.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I have last year when all the schools and everything were shut down, I have a junior. I had a junior in high school. He still lives with me. His name's he's my foster son. Basically, he's 18 now, so it changes this dynamic a bit. But he when they were doing online school, he was like, I would get emails from the teachers, be like, he says your internet went out. And I'm like, come on, dude. This is like, no, don't be this dumb. Please don't be this dumb.
Right. I want to carry water for you.
You can verify this way too easily. You said the internet was out. They emailed me. I was like, no, we have internet. and now they're wondering where you are. Like this is
Yeah.
you can't get away with that stuff. Come on.
Yeah. No, it's
You were
true.
at the time where you could, and that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now they have it to where like you can't have like multiple browsers open, but like I did my entire Spanish 1 and 2 in high school using Google Translate, and I got 104% both years.
Whoa.
Didn't learn a lick of Spanish.
Overachiever.
Didn't learn a word, but like just Google Translate, and then that was it.
Yeah. Well, nobody did.
Yeah.
I don't know how many years of Spanish I took, like cumulative, but I remember like rain jacket, library, toilet, that kind of stuff. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Those just a handful. Nothing that's really going to save your life.
The important words.
The important words. But yeah. So, gosh, I guess. So
you did online school for 3 years, and then it sounds like you did a lot musically while you're doing online school.
Yeah.
And at 19, you get hooked up with
Ruben.
John Ruben and do that thing for a couple of years out in California.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, doing all that, and it was funny because I dated really artistic, weird, fun, cool, bisexual girls most of my life, and then got really tired of that and was like, I'm going to finally do what the church has been telling me forever. I'm going to date a sweet Christian girl. And we did it for 5 years. And then, that led me into my mid-20s. And right around the same time that like we both, realized, she was like, I want to, settle down and have a family. And I was like, I want to cover myself in blue paint and run naked through the street. So like we've got different ideas of where we want to go. And, it was a pretty, clean, sweet, respectable breakup. And that was around the time when I had some people in my life that they were like my two closest friends, and they were both post-Christian. They had both left the church. One grew up in a traveling family band, and the other one just grew up in, an evangelical.
Was it the Hoffman family?
No, it was not. But
Bummer.
I feel like I know them. But
if it comes back to me, please let me know, because I would love to get in touch with one of the 1,800 children they had playing in their family band.
Amazing. Was one of them named Chase? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think I just remember like my parents would have. They're like folk music. I think
it's like the odds are good by the sound of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they had a child every year and a half for 10 years straight. So,
amazing.
So, what did the years in LA and just like being unplugged from the community aspect of it, did that have a lot to do with you leaving Christianity?
Not really. I actually lived with when I moved out there, I lived with Flynn Adam, which if you're familiar with Flynn Adam, he was a part of LA Symphony, big rapper. Yeah.
I was gonna say he went by Flynn, right?
Yep. He went by Flynn. So me and Flynn were roommates, and John lived in so we had two houses on one plot. John and his family lived in the front house, and then me and Flynn lived in the back. So I mean, I still stayed in a pretty tight like Christian community. I mean, I had like friends from all over the place because like playing in local music, like, it's just like, I don't know. And I didn't care if people were Christian or not, but like I stayed very like true to my relationship with Jesus, and, cried when I would have sex and all of that good stuff.
I have a friend who would talk about how he's like, I remember having sex with girls and then feeling guilty and then trying to preach the gospel to them right afterwards and get them saved. And have to talk about it. We shouldn't do this.
That's
anymore.
a good angle.
Yeah,
that's like
it shows you how like deep that shit burrows into your brain. That's crazy.
Oh yeah, bait and switch.
Well, that was fun. Do you want to feel bad about yourself?
Because I already do.
I don't want to do
this. Is what I do instead of having a cigarette.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So it was my time. So, I guess I haven't really gotten totally into this before, but it was how much pain I experienced in my life when I was living in California that really started to begin my departure from God. and not necessarily just God, but like Christianity, because it was like I said, it was like trying to plug into these new communities and all of that, and being kind of turned away and crying out. I started dealing with tons and tons of stuff when I was out there. It was like my first time being out of my parents' home, and
Mhm.
having a full-time job and being in a startup of all, so it was just like I wasn't just working, it was my life. And you know, with that, also like the age I was 21. So it was like I was finally starting to, be able to dissect my life and why I am the way I am and what I don't like about myself. And all these things started to come to the surface. So it was just like a really, really hard 2 years. And, just constantly crying out to God, just like, help me, give me friends, give me community, like, relieve me. There was no relief that ever came from this. And then I eventually, you know, realized I was like, I need to go home. I need to go back to my parents' house, and I need to get therapy, and I need to get my shit together, because I was drinking a lot. And I was just sad. I was a sad guy. So
Can I
like,
jump back to your story earlier? Is it's like if you grew up in a world where like you called on God and God delivered and God answered, like you
Mhm.
talked about the story of your toe being healed when you were a kid. It's like, did that kind of stuff enter your mind where you're like,
yeah.
why here? Why this? Why not this? Why not when I really like your toe would have been fucking fine if you went to the hospital, but now you're at a point where you actually could use some
Right.
Yeah, like where
existential
are you?
help.
Yeah.
And I imagine that had to play into it, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it became this kind of anger, it
Mhm.
wasn't a disbelief. It was an anger, it was, and obviously, like, ultimately, like, now looking back, I'm like so grateful for that time period. It was freaking boot camp. But that kind of started to just kind of entertain this, like, well, you know what, fuck that kind of thing. um, and then it started to make me, because the one of the biggest bullshit things that was always pushed on me, sorry to get like, intense about it, but like,
No, go for it.
people always saying like, what's God's purpose for your life? Waiting for the Lord's timing, waiting on God, waiting, like all of this stuff. And just being like, I've never been encouraged to take shit into my own hands and figure out how to do it, you
Mm.
know? And I didn't have like any real examples of that in my life. So it was just kind of like crying out to God, because I felt like I would be doing a disservice to God if I were to just go and try and handle it myself. Um, so that was kind of this anger that came up in me. It was just like, why have I been waiting on you? What is this? This is just negligence. This is an excuse that I'm making.
Yeah.
And I need to really just show up for my own life.
That
Uh,
is a weird like back and forth paradigm within that community too. It's like on the one hand they're like very conservative, pull yourself up by your bootstraps sort of people, but then on the other hand it's like, well, did you ask God? Were you listening? Did you really want to know what God had to say about this, or did you want to do what you want to do? Like there's so much uncertainty there, you know? It's hard
yeah.
enough to figure out what to do when you're that age anyways, much less
Right.
like mix, eternal significance into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And God forbid you're selfish,
Yeah.
So um it was hard. It was really hard. But then I went home and started, honestly, this was like pretty revolutionary. It's pretty life-changing. Was I started therapy with a Christian woman, but she did these kind of very like mildly esoteric, like guided meditation, visualization, uh, therapy sessions with me. And it was really powerful. She would just be like, all right, she called it safe place. And I would close my eyes. She'd be like, okay, go to a safe place. And I would usually picture like my grandparents' house or a big grassy field or something beautiful. And I would be there, then she would be like, are you there? I'd be like, yeah, I'm there. And then she'd be like, now invite Jesus to join you. And I would sit there and invite Jesus to join me. And then once Jesus kind of showed up in my imagination, um, then she'd be like, okay, now talk to Jesus, ask Jesus, what he has for you today. And there was some of the most powerful messages and just like sweetest bouts of love, like in those therapy sessions from this, guided meditation. And
So you
that's
felt like you
now
could really be fully honest in there, in that
absolutely.
space, which is amazing because that's an interesting tactic to deploy, because a lot of Christian therapy goes sour.
Mm-hmm.
But that sounds like actual therapy with a Christian twist. Like, you're able to use that language to get what you need, get what they need, not even what you need, but what the person in therapy needs, which is to be honest. And supposedly you can be with Jesus, even if you can't be with other people. So to set that up in a way that felt safe it's interesting. That's a kind of a cool thing for her to have figured out to
Yeah.
do.
It was incredible. It was so incredible. And she was also, like the first person to really challenge my like, beliefs of my family and all of that stuff, just start to kind of like shake everything in my life and
Mhm.
have it all fall apart in front of me. So,
Like a good
but
therapist should.
yes, absolutely. Oh my God. She was wonderful. She's this like old, like Jewish woman with a like a New York accent. She's like, tell me about how you judge your family. And I'm just like, I was like, me judge my family?
It's
Never.
like
And
George
she's
Costanza's mom.
do it. Yes. But yeah, so that, but the seed had been planted of like this like temptation of departure from Christianity and the church. And honestly, I was so much more intrigued by the people groups that I'd come across in so many like creative cultures and things like that, rather than the church. And oh man, I think it was a really slow process, and then I got invited to start playing keyboards when I was about 25. I got invited to start playing keyboard at a local church that was like blowing up and like was getting so much money from all these mega churches from around the country. They were just like, we're going to make this church a mega church. And it was just like,
Interesting.
it was so wild. You'd show up there and it was just like light show. I mean, you've seen it. It's just like freaking
Yeah.
light show. Everybody's on headset. Like, is the pastor ready? All right, cue scene one. They're just like, there's just like 50 people in a
It's
tiny
theatrics.
space, all just
Crazy.
freaking, yeah, just buzzing each other like, all right, go, cue scene, change the lights. All right, are we ready? Are they ready? Get the band, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh my God. And then everybody gets up there and it's just like, all of worship is to backtracks and it's got to be the best. And it just was the most, it just felt gross to me.
Did it from the time you started, or did you just start? Was it like, because when you said, yeah, I'll do that, had you started going to that church and then they asked you to do the music? What was the connection to the church?
They showed up and I usually played for free at churches, but this church hit me up and they were like, yo, we've got money for you. And I was like, I'll start playing at your church. Sure.
Okay.
Sorry if my cat's making noise. He's climbing up the back of my chair right now.
Oh, cry baby.
We'll see if he makes it. So I mean, they basically, I had friends that were playing there, and they were like, hey, they recommended me as a keyboard player, and they offered to pay me, which was cool. And yeah, I started going there, and at first I was like, at first it was like I was impressed by the level of production and like just
Sure.
how tight the system was there for how small it was. But it quickly just like being there, and I guess growing up, this will go back all the way, but growing up behind the scenes in the church,
Sure.
I saw it all. I heard it all. Like, numbers were what mattered. Money was what mattered. Like, that was what was important. And it was it was a bummer to just get there and just be in one that was like so obviously strictly concerned with that. And
So they just built a business, really. Is what it probably felt
totally.
like.
And like I was saying, all these other mega churches around that were helping fund it. I mean, they're all
How'd they get that connection to other? Did other mega churches decide that this area needed a mega church and they all came together? Like, do you know that?
I don't know the story of how they got so like pulled into this network, but I mean, they were having, I mean, this guy, pastor went to Kanye's Sunday service, kind of thing. Like he
He's
was
like a Carl Lentz type. Like,
he was
okay.
cool guy, real cool guy. um, you know, but and then at one point, like I had a drinking problem like on and off for a few years, and I remember confiding in the worship pastor, and so guess what he got me for Christmas that year? He got me a handle of whiskey. Uh,
Cool. That
and
guy
What?
is
yeah,
a neat guy.
that was a huge like punch in the face, and I just was like, all right, I'm done, and left there. Got invited to one more church that a bunch of my friends had started going to, and it finally like felt like home, and it was really 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 wonderful. And the pastor at the time, just this sweet dude, and he saw people. I mean, he himself was like a deep feeling, creative type, and uh, it was a very great place to go, but I had already started kind of out the door. So
Sure.
it was nice being there, but I was just tired and had so much of my own like curiosities and my tangible kind of spiritual life that I wanted to explore outside the context of the Western Christian church specifically. So yeah, so I dipped out, officially like started telling people like I'm not a Christian anymore when I was like, 26,
Nerve
27.
wracking.
Oh, oh,
Yeah, it's
oh
a
my
tough step to
God.
make.
Horrifying, because because you've been on the other side of it. You've seen people leave the church and you never hear from them again. They're like, I had seen people like um, banished from the church or excommunicated or whatever, just these extreme things. And um, just realizing, but then once I left the church, I realized I was like, oh my God, like the center point of so many of my relationships was Christ. And it was not any type of real authentic, not saying that Christ being the center is inauthentic, but there was no other type of
Can be. I
connection
mean,
or
it really
relationship
can
with
be
people.
because I mean, if you want to take it from a Christian perspective, or from the perspective of what we would assume would be the perspective of Christ, it's like it shouldn't be. Like your beliefs, your values, who you are, what you've done, all of that shouldn't actually have anything to do with your human to human connections. But and
Right.
if your connection to that with other is what's, I don't know, but we see that go the wrong way all the time, and like you had said, that being the center of people's connections, it's more of like the identity aspect. It's like, the riding gun club, that's their identity and that's their connection, or your local theater chapter or whatever it is. It's just like it's nothing. It ends up being nothing more than that when the lived experience of it isn't to value people regardless of whether or not they share the same values as you do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I had experienced with like, being around so many different people groups, and then having like my church friends and then my music friends and my art friends and my LA life and all of this stuff. It was like some of the most loving, wonderful, selfless people that would show up at my front door and ask me if I was doing okay. Those weren't my Christian friends. So I was
I
just
know
like,
about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I was just like, wow, there is a deep loving character. It was just like I've just felt like I was so deep underneath forcing myself to believe a certain way, and then when I finally stopped, it was just like, what have I been doing and thinking is so strange. Um, just so much like just passive judgment and et cetera. That was just so beautiful. Like I think back on it, I'm
All I
just
can
like, how
think
could
of
I do that?
hearing your story and so many others, like the irony of like what you experience, like what people experience when they shed that belief, or when they decide to leave this, I don't, maybe it's an Americanized version of Christian, whatever you want to call it. Like I don't, and we can get into like where you're at and how you understand spirituality from here, I guess. But like all the things we were told Jesus would do for us, that how it he, he will set you free, he will bring you peace, he will bring you joy, he will bring you satisfaction, he will, it's like you find that when you leave that evangelical structure, it's
Yes.
like that's the freedom. It's like the truth that sets you free is that you can find what you're looking for outside of that building. And it's once you swallow, it's like, I don't know, not to make a 1990s fucking reference, but like it's like the red and the blue pill, right? Like
Yeah.
once you wake the fuck up, like you can't go back. Like even one of the things I think is fun about the Matrix is like even when they realize the outside world is shittier, the shitty truth is where freedom is, and not like in this like fake fantasy world that you build around yourselves and insulate you from the
Yeah.
outside world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's one of control, and it is not. That's one thing that like I observed, like looking back on it. I was like, oh man, we got three things we're guaranteed in the kind of physical experience of life: is birth, you know, have a kid, maybe have sex, at least that's part of nature, and then die. Um, that's generally the arc there. But like in that middle space, the space that we are in now, the space between birth and death, I feel like there are two kind of core components. There is the primal kind of component, which is the like, I need to mate and reproduce to survive. And then there is a more of a spiritual kind of thing. It's purpose. You're like, oh, I feel like I need purpose. So what did the church, and you see a lot of things, they take control of those two aspects of nature. It's like we're born into a nature of wanting to reproduce and need purpose, and they just go, well, we're going to tell you purpose, and we're going to tell you sex is wrong, and we're going to control these things. And it really locks you into this like kind of really terrible, I mean, it is control, and it's a bummer.
Yeah.
And a wise man once said, "Do not tell me what I can and cannot do when I rock."
When I rock, exactly. And that's what I said to the church when I left. I even carried one of their microphones, and then I dropped it, saying, "I'm not going to steal this because I'm still a good person, just because I'm not a Christian."
Stealing is wrong. Did it make waves when you left? Like, did it make any wave? I mean, I know you have like good social media presence, like, but I don't know like if
my buddy noticed.
Yeah, I mean, so do you feel like it made waves when you left? Did you hear about it much?
I was very subtle about it, because the last thing I wanted to do was to villainize Christianity. I'm definitely not on this podcast to talk shit about Christianity. I'm not, I don't walk around saying like, man, those people are stupid, because they're not. I mean, it's just it did ruffle some feathers, and like, if the pastor's wife wanted to hang out and sit down and be like, I know you'll be back. She said it so many times, I know you'll be back. And I was
that's
just
so
like,
dismissive though. That's tough, man.
it was frustrating to me at the time, because she's wonderful, she's so sweet, and I love her to death, and still do. But I just felt unheard and unseen in that conversation, because I was like, specifically in my trajectory right now, I may come back in a year, but right now I want you to see me for who I am and where I'm going and what I believe and how I feel. This is me right now, and you just saying that is it stunk.
Yeah,
it's tough, like, to communicate some, like, their viewpoint, their worldview, and everything that that they hold as like that like a central pillar of their belief structure.
Yes.
Is based on this idea that like there's no purpose if you leave here. Like, you step outside this circle, there's nothing good out there. Any joy is fleeting, any purpose you feel is temporary, and eventually you're going to realize the error of your ways. And it's like so hard to be like, look, it's not true, and it's not true. And you know what? I'm glad you're happy over there, but you got to just recognize that like that's not working for me, and it's I'm doing better out here. It's better for me out here.
That was probably, yeah, exactly that. I mean, one of the things that I would always try to tell people, if people did ask me about it, or want to sit down and go get Christian coffee about it,
in a Christian coffee house, maybe.
That kind of vibe. Just like,
let's break bread. Let's fellowship.
I want to break some bread with you. I would always tell them, be like, I'm so much happier. I feel so free. I feel so honest about things I felt really deep down that I've repressed. And, it was like, But what you were saying, where it's like me leaving automatically makes the statement to them that I don't agree with what they believe. And that, that like, and people can take offense to that. They are afraid of that. They don't want it to be questioned. They don't want to be with somebody that is saying they're wrong, even though I wasn't saying they were wrong. It's just the way I was living was saying that, or at least it could be interpreted that way.
Yeah.
But
Well, when the Christian message is like that we grew up with, at least, I mean, to be clear, there are plenty of Christian messages that wouldn't make this assumption. That
yes, right.
assert, but the one that we grew up in was, this is the truth. Anything other than this is a lie. Any other version of this is potentially a lie. We'll make the decision based on, I don't know, which one you are looking at, and we'll talk about it, but
Right.
we won't. And so when that's the paradigm that's set up, is like everything outside of this is a lie. It is wrong. When you can leave and say, if that's good for you, great, but it's not for me anymore. I need this. It feels like an attack, because it's like you are telling us that we are wrong. And you're like, no, I'm telling you that that's your way of looking at the world, and that works for you, and that's beautiful, as long as it helps you grow and become a good person and maintain community. Like, you can say that to them, and that's not gonna feel like a nice thing to say. Whereas that's what you would want to hear with where you're going. So it's tough. It is telling someone, I believe you're wrong, but that's okay, because none of us can really truly be completely totally right. So it's an attack,
and it's a feeling that I feel like you got to have a little bit of sympathy for, and that's why I like, you're
totally.
You don't hate Christianity, and you don't hate
Not
the
at all.
people that are involved or think they're stupid, because who doesn't feel that same pull to interject and to disagree and to contest what somebody thinks, and like, I have views about war that to me make all the sense in the world, but when I'm talking to someone who served overseas and was in combat, and they're saying something to me that directly contradicts like my viewpoint of it, like I have an urge to be like, no, well, no, but you have to almost kind of surrender to like, this person was there. I don't see exactly where they're coming from, but I need to just let this be. I need to like let them say their piece and take it with a grain of salt, and understand they might have a perspective on this that I don't. And you have to do that so many times in life when you're having like meaningful conversations with people. And so I feel like there's a degree of understanding we all need to have when having those conversations with people that just are having a tough time processing the fact that like you are doing better outside,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and that's just the truth with any, any conversation. Not having like a respect for someone's perspective and opinion, and like a patience, really just shows that you're looking for an affirmation of yours, because maybe you don't feel so actually secure in it. I mean, it could be saying all sorts of things, but I feel like that was kind of the case in a lot of those conversations for me.
Affirmation. That's a good way of putting it. Like,
people
reconfirm to me.
Yeah.
That
Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm right, so that I don't have to ask myself if I'm right.
I want the best for you, but I do hope that you're kind of miserable out there.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, a breakup. Oh my God. Because it was,
I want you to be happy, just not with anyone else.
Yeah. Wow. And talk about, so I guess moving a little bit on from like leaving, it didn't really create any ripples, because I didn't talk about it too much, and I didn't come out with some aggressive post or anything like that, because I didn't know what I was stepping into. It felt like I was like, I'm going to go jump in this pond. I don't know anything about this water, but so I'm not going to turn around and be like, fuck the land, like, I'm just going to be like,
a sandbox game. You're like, I have so much to explore. I love
exactly.
it.
I was like, this is going to be fun. I've got no opinion on that compared to this, because I don't know anything about this. So it was like, I get out there, and all I have is like my experiences of miracles. And I haven't even gotten into the stories of miracles with you guys. Like,
I was about to bring us back there.
when I was 18, I went to Iceland with my band Fantastic, and we got robbed in Iceland of all places. They like don't even have like the harshest prison punishment they have is like 3 years in prison because like
I was
nothing
gonna
bad
say
happens there.
the same crime rate is like, yeah, I don't know, Sweden. I don't know.
Yeah, it's so funny. So we
Great
get there,
analogy.
we get robbed, and we're playing a Christian music festival. Their first and probably only. Um, and we had been staying there for about a week at that point, so a lot of the people on the festival grounds knew who we were, and we told them like, "Hey, somebody broke into like the room we were staying in and stole our money." And we were 18, so like it was like $100. I don't know, it wasn't much, but it was still like it was a lot to us at that point in time. And my debit card had been stolen. At one point, this woman comes up to us and she's like, "Hey, can I pray for you guys?" I can't do a fake Icelandic accent because I don't totally remember what it sounds like. But she takes our hands and she's like, "I pray that God gives you your money back." And we were like, "Thank you." And then she's like, "Never mind. I pray that God gives you twice your money back." And we were like, "You're crazy. Okay, thank you. Bye." And a few hours later, this woman walks in with a box into the room we were staying in on the festival grounds, and she's like, "Hello, I'm from the church, like up the street. We heard that you got robbed, and we took tithes and offerings for you guys. This is from all of our services today. Here you go." And then she counts it out, and it is to $1, like exactly twice what was stolen from us. You know, it was just this like amazing miracle moment.
That's wild, man.
Also, it was like right when I got to LA. Gosh, this is a fun story. I'll try to make this one quick though. But I got to LA. I needed a car. I had been living, in Venice for like 6 months. My studio was like a block from my house, and like 2 blocks from my house. So I didn't need a car, but I was pretty sick of just being stuck on the west side. So I was like, okay, I want to get a car, but I didn't have a lot of money. So I was like, my friend Kristen calls me. She's like, "Hey, Jesse, can I pray for you?" And I was like, "Yes, you can." She's like, "What do you want prayer for?" I was like, "I need a free car." And she's like, "I pray that God gives you a cheap car." And I said, "No, I need a free car." 2 hours later, I get a phone call from my friend Anna, and she's like, "Hey, Jess, I don't know, this is weird. Do you want my car?" So it's just like, then there is a longer version of that story that's just like a total confirmation that it was just this like miracle type of experience.
Do you ever think of getting back into Christianity to get free stuff again?
You know what?
It was panning out for you.
It continued after I left Christianity, and that was one of my biggest things. And it wasn't necessarily about what I was getting from it, but it was more of just like it became what I was in love with life, was these kind of intangible, like this love with something that was divine. And some people call the source, some people call the matrix, some people call the light, some people call God, some people call the higher self, some people, whatever is applicable. But like
Yeah.
this love that I had for this greater thing like became just my life, and it is now like my entire life is what I spend so much of my time thinking about and focusing on. And that was when I left the church. That was the hardest part, was this like I didn't see God when I looked at the stars anymore. And that was heartbreaking to me because that was my whole life. And when I thought about death, there was no safety net of heaven anymore. It was just confusion and darkness. And of course, I went through like a nihilistic period and, just like started experiencing the ball rolled and rolled. But there was just this grievance of missing this idea of God. And eventually it all kind of started to pick back up in all these fun, whimsical, beautiful ways. And now I feel like I understand Jesus and love Jesus more than I ever have in my life. And Jesus no longer seems like some kind of superhero figure, but actually just like this incredibly wonderful, powerful, loving person that really just fucking got it.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you there, man. Because I still participate in the Christian tradition, I guess is the way I'll put it. I'm part of a church. I still find that connection to what it was like an evolving understanding of Jesus, right? You're like given this view of what he's like when you're a kid, and it's very concrete, and then it's like rules this or that, and this is what it looks like. And then like if you maintain a sense of spirituality and then you continue to read it and pay attention to what he's saying, even outside of how it gets filtered through the rest of the New Testament or the Apostle Paul. This dude got it. Like, this dude came here to tear down walls, and all I've ever seen my entire life is Christianity building them up. Like, there's this in out, right, wrong, and when you realize that there's no fucking walls anywhere, and the people that Jesus is talking to and ridiculing are the ones who are building them, who are partitioning what's holy and what's not. It's like, so I think that's why I can still identify with it, even though I probably I wouldn't get lumped into it by plenty of people that I know. They, even since starting this podcast, I've definitely received some messages not really being Christian anymore, but that's fine. Cause because you don't need
Can
that
I
anymore.
agree?
Right. Like, yeah, Casey agrees, but like, and when you leave it, you didn't need that anymore, Jesse. You were able to just say, I'm not Christian, but neither was Jesus, right? He was just, so who gives a shit?
Right.
And you can
Yeah.
still attach to that message and that like life-giving, that to me it is a life-giving message when I can slow my fucking life down for 2 seconds and think about it. So I hear what you're saying, man. I love it.
Yeah. And there's so many opposing things that I feel like we were raised to believe and honestly feel, compared to what Jesus was really doing. And one of them is like, honestly, just like self-empowerment. I feel like so much power is taken from people when they're in the Christian church. It's just like, you're broken, you need help, fuck you. And, but like, Jesus like knew that he just had so much love to give, and I feel like we all like honestly do, and we get what we give out, and there's just so much like encouragement, especially saying to his like disciples, and just like you can do this, like I already gave you already got all you need.
It's
And
funny because they say like they'll use the language, right? It'll be like, well, Jesus came for the sick, not the healthy. And you're like, no, we're all sick. Like, but we're all okay. Like, because Christianity also perverts we're all sick, and they turn that into a shame-based message, as opposed
yes.
to like Christ is leveling the playing field and saying, like, the only people who are in are the people who recognize that we're struggling through this together, and like the people who have sat up there on their mountaintop looking down at you are the ones who are outside of it. They don't get it. They're missing out on the beautiful thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's like this beautiful like journey of selflessness and love, but it's like it sounds so unsatisfying, but like it truly like is this incredibly beautiful experience that provides for you in ways that you don't know you want and you don't know you need until you live it. Because we all get on like big egoic journeys. But yeah, anyways, sorry, I'm starting to drift into later stuff, but yeah.
No, that's fine. If you want to take us down, I mean, I'm cool to stay here for a bit and kind of see where you're at now. Like I'm getting an idea of it. You've talked about Jesus, but after leaving the church and kind of spending some time trying to, it sounds like you've kind of developed a unified ethos of some sorts.
Yeah, I want to assume a student posture for my whole life. So I really don't know what I got right now, but I know that it's fun and it's lovely and it's wonderful. And so when, so every time God, okay, I'm going to get into it. So every time I travel, weird miraculous synchronicities like take place, and just fun things like I was saying, those were just like two of my little miracle stories, and I just have bucket loads of just like fun stuff like that, like answered prayers, crazy synchronicities, like whoa, this is crazy. And now at this point in my life, it's like an everyday type of thing, like even today, I'm just like, I was moving a bunch of I have a bunch of like spiritual totem kind of items, because it's all fun, and I love subscribing purpose to things, and it's nice. It's like having a security blanket. And I do believe that things do carry some kind of energetic or magical or spiritual significance. And I'm like, I've in the process of moving, and I waited till like have a day where I was like, I'm going to move only these items because I want to be careful with them. And I'm moving them, and I just decide I'm going to stop and grab a quick like coconut water or kombucha or something. Of course, I would be getting kombucha. So I already sound like a hippie. And I pull into like the grocery store, and I had just been talking to somebody. I was like, I need to find a cool venue to do like a poetry event and also have like a spiritual twist to it. And then this woman rolls down her window and she's like, "Hey, Jesse." And I was like, "Whoa, hey." I give everybody a Southern accent. Not everybody has a Southern accent, but and she just was like, "It's me from the crystal shop." And I was like, "Oh, crazy. It's this woman who like sells, like all of this stuff that I was currently in the process of moving." And then she's like, "Yeah, we just got this cool venue for doing indoor markets, and like we want to start doing events there." And I was like, "I'm looking for one as of this morning." So, totally just synced up like crazy. Anyway, so anytime I travel abroad, crazy miraculous things happen. And I was about to go to Europe for the very first time in my life, right when I had finally agreed and decided and kind of come out as I'm not a Christian anymore. And I was afraid that God was going to take his light from me and that all of my miraculous experiences would cease to take place and I would no longer be participating in the sweet magic of my existence. And in fact, I would just be kind of bland and boring and die. So, we oh man, I started dabbling with prayer a lot, but praying not to the God of the Bible, but praying to specific moments in my life and praying to specific experiences in my life. Like, dear spirit that was with me when I was afraid when I was a kid, like, dear spirit that was with me this day that I performed really well in school, dear spirit that was with me, when I experienced this type of love. And it was always something that pertained to what I was praying about, so that it was just kind of like, it's kind of like if it was this, kind of cohesive whole idea of a supreme or like supreme being of God or something, then ultimately those prayers would make it to that thing. But I wanted to try to get more specific. And I started getting into, we're going to venture into some stuff here. I started getting into star seeds and past lives.
Okay, I've been
Yeah.
down this hallway on TikTok.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is a whole thing. And this is I'm going to tell you guys my favorite story. And I'm actually going to Europe in about 2 months to write a book about this. Because I feel like, I don't know. Anyways,
to a book.
Your life is magical.
it's
I
just
think
You're like a
You-
whimsical, magical creature. I think.
whimsical. You are whimsical.
that's one of my that's one of my favorite compliments. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you guys. I love stories. Stories are my favorite. And somebody once told me God gives stories to the storytellers, and it's my favorite thing. Like I have a whole so this actually ties into it, and this is also a story. So here we go.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this is going because I'm on this ride now. You got me.
All right, here we go. So it is the end of April or beginning of May 2017. I had been talking to this girl. I call her the mother of my awakening. Her name's Anastasia. She's this incredible vlogger who was living in Oregon, now is in Missouri. And she had introduced me to star seeds and past lives and all of these things. And me just being like, just walking out the door of Christianity, I'm picking up everything going, whoa, this is crazy. You're telling me Earth is older than 10,000 years old? I just, whatever. Just totally just kind of like no shit kind of things. But everything was so fun and new and exciting. It was that curiosity that I first was talking about, it was just catapulted me into, Hinduism, Buddhism, everything, just whatever. I wanted to know about it. So I got into past lives, and I had just performed a show with a band that I played in called Vespertine, which is Colin Rigsby from House of Heroes.
Oh shit. Nice, dude.
Yeah. So I produced the
throwback
first
names.
Yeah.
How many throwback names this episode? I love this.
So Colin started a project called Vespertine. I produced the first Vespertine EP, and then I became the keyboard player in Vespertine for a few years. And we had just played a show in Cleveland, and I'm laying in bed in our Airbnb. Or actually, it was a friend's place. And I'm like, dear spirit that sometimes talks to me, have I ever had any past lives? And then all of a sudden I very intrusively got 3 pictures in my head. One of them, well, 3 kind of messages. Some people call them downloads. It was just like, it was as if somebody had audibly spoken to me, but there were no actual words. It was just receiving information. It was, one was, you were Egyptian in a past life. The other one was, look up the Rosetta Stone. The other one was, look up this blue stone. And so I was like, oh, the Egyptian in a past life thing makes sense, because there was some odd origin story from my childhood that I was some kind of Egyptian prince, and I went through a portal to be here and now. And that was just kind of a funny thing in my family. They called me the Boo Boo Man, and it was the story. Also, like, in one of my first ever safe place therapy guided meditation sessions, Jesus found me and he said, "You are my lucky boy." And it was like very significant. And one of the very first contests I ever won in my life was pre-screening tickets of The Prince of Egypt. And, it's just like all of these little things. And ever since I was little, you guys are going to think this is stupid, but ever since I was little, I've always slept with my arms crossed against my chest and my legs crossed.
My college roommates did that. They were identical twins and they dressed the same every night. So I don't put the same level of significance on anything they did. They were just crazy.
They were crazy. Yeah. So people would always make fun of me at sleepovers. Like, are you a vampire? Are you a mummy? Like, what are you? So
I'm Lucky Boy Boo Boo Man.
I'm Lucky Boy Boo Boo Man, dude. You're speaking my language. Yep.
That's like the name of the episode.
You Lucky Boy Boo Boo Man, Jesse Cale.
I wrote it down.
Hell yeah. So I get the Egyptian thing. I was like, okay, that's funny. That kind of makes sense. That's cute. And then the Rosetta Stone, which I was like, oh, I remember studying the Rosetta Stone. I don't totally remember what it is. And I looked it up and it was like, it's the most significant, it's considered the most significant Egyptian artifact ever found, because it was what allowed them to translate hieroglyphics.
Caused a lot of trouble for Mormonism.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wild.
They had some tablets that they had purchased that were originally supposed to be written by Abraham or something in Egyptian. Turns out they were not.
Man, sometimes that happens. I remember the first time that happened to me. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Anyways, Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, so Rosetta Stone.
I think maybe, who knows, maybe 300 years from now, after you start your own religion with your new book, we might come across some tablets that fuck shit up for you and your followers, man.
Tome of the Boo Boo Man.
Whoops. Oh, no. They find an old YouTube video of mine and they're like, what is this? How dare you? So anyway, that was like, I looked that up and I was like, oh, cool. Egyptian artifact. That makes sense. And I feel like I probably knew that deep in my subconscious somewhere. And then there's this blue crystal rock thing. And so I just Google blue rock and I start scrolling until I feel that, when you're a kid and you're like, I want that one and not that one. Like, it's just this like intuitive kind of response. I always wait for that childlike sensation, because that's when I know it's intuition, like why I wanted to collect that stone instead of that stone and carry that one in my pocket when I was a kid rather than that one. I don't know, but that's what I look for in things. So I'm scrolling and I was like, oh, that's the rock that I saw in my mind brain thing, download imagination. I click on it and it's called azurite, and I click on it again into the website and it says azurite, held in high regard by ancient Egyptians, pertaining to exploring past lives and alternate existences. And I was like, oh, weird. So there was this whole kind of little micro, I call it an information confirmation. And I was like, crazy. And then I didn't get up and proclaim, I was Egyptian in a past life. I just went to bed, because what the hell do I do with that information? I just thought it was cool,
Sure.
But it was a fairly fun kind of mystical experience. So a few days later, I get my very first ever tattoos. I get Peter Rabbit tattooed on the right side of my ankle. And I get the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland tattooed on the left side of my ankle. And they were sort of to represent a duality of storytelling and a duality of just kind of storybook characters. Peter Rabbit being kind of a feminine homeostasis and being kind of a like home and nurturement to me. And then the Alice in Wonderland White Rabbit was the adventure unwritten, like the go forth, the curiosity, the go down the rabbit hole kind of thing. So I get these 2 tattoos, and then a few days later, I'm leaving for my very first ever poetry tour, and it's in Europe. Because I run a poetry publishing company called Secret Midnight Press with my friend Ashley, and we had just published our first 2 books a few months prior, 6 months prior, and we were doing a little tour with Vespertine, Colin from House of Heroes, and so like he played acoustic, and then we would do some poetry, and he would play acoustic, and it was a fun little thing because we kind of had just like this little similar fan base. We were all in kind of a rising tide together. But that fear, I was going through that divorce and that fear of like God taking his light from me, and no miracles will take place on this international trip, because like I said, anytime I've traveled international before that, there's just been crazy things that happen. Like I won't go into more, but there are lots. So anyways, I get there, and the very first day we are about to perform in Belgium, Brussels, and I'm vlogging. I've got my camera, and I'm like, "Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Jesse, and I'm in Belgium," and blah 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 blah. And then I look out the window, and I see there are these 2 like human type figures with bunny heads. They're like statues. There's 2 of them, and I was like, "Hey, look, it's my tattoos. They're following me. Cute, 2 bunnies." And then I turn the camera around. I'm like, crazy things like this always happen when I travel. Anyways, we're gonna go do poetry. Peace out. Smash that like button, subscribe, whatever. The next day we are in Cologne, Germany, and we're out shopping and walking around, and I sit down on this bench because I'm tired, and I look, and there's 2 little stuffed bunnies in the window behind me, and I take a little photo of them, and I was like, cute, 2 days in a row, bunnies. The next day we are in London. We're about to perform, and I run down to the bar to grab some water, and there's this blonde girl there, and she's like, hello, my name's Anna, and I love your poetry. And I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, what do you do, Anna? And she's like, well, I'm a social worker, and I also take care of these guys. And she holds up her phone, and she's got 2 rabbits on her phone. And I grab her shoulders. I was like, Anna, you're going to be a part of a story I tell 1,000 times. And she's like, okay. The next day I'm like in a bookstore, and there's 2 bunnies on the cover of a book. And I'm just like, I'm starting to get this weird I'm starting to like oppose seeing these bunnies, because I don't want to fall in love with them. I don't want to get like a sort of dependency on seeing these bunnies. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to feel like I'm going to have a bad day if I don't see bunnies, like that kind of thing. So I'm trying to like push it away. We get to the next day, we're in Paris, and at this point, everybody I'm traveling with knows that I'm seeing bunnies every day. And if you've ever flown in to Charles de Gaulle, you have to take a train to get to the city, and their warning sign for don't put your hand in the door is a picture of a rabbit with its hand stuck in the door. So within moments of getting to Paris, I step onto the train, the door closes, there's 2 little rabbits right next to each other with their hands stuck in the door, and I take a photo, and my friend taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, hey, look, rabbits. I was like, dude, I know, just stop. So mind you, my birthday's 5 days away, and I was like, maybe it's some kind of big, like, universal happy birthday that's going to, kind of take place and unfold, and it'll be really cute and fun. So I also had seen that like somewhere in around France was an azurite mine. So while I was in France, I went and found a little like rock shop and found a piece of azurite, and I bought it just like for keepsake, because the kind of past life narrative was still playing in my head. So to kind of speed the story up along, still seeing bunnies every day. We get to May 19th, which is my birthday. And we decide to go back to London because like I said, I worked in YouTube, and I had a bunch of YouTuber friends over in London. So May 19th, get to London, we all meet up, and we go to this market. I forget the name of the market, but it is just buzzing and overwhelming and fun and full of cheap stuff. And we're walking around, then we walk past the store, and I look in, and it's this shoe shop called Irregular Choice. And they've got things where it's like high heels, but the heels are stacks of pancakes, and the strap over the shoe is a fried egg, and there's a piece of butter on it somewhere. And it's just like the most absurd shoes you could imagine. And I love absurd things. And there was these platform sandals that were blue glitter and pink flowers. And I was like, I need these shoes right now. I need these sandals, because blue and pink were my colors, and it was my birthday. So I was like, I'm going to go in there and see if they have these, sandals in my size. I walk in, I was like, hey, do you have these sandals in my size? And they go, well, that's the only size we have of that shoe. So yes. And I was like, weird. They pull it out and they hand me the box, and it's this giant heart, and there's a pink bunny and a blue bunny kissing in the middle of the box, in the middle of the heart. And I was like, oh, it's a big happy birthday. This is it. And I was like, no more bunnies, please. Thank you for the birthday present. I love it. Doesn't stop there. We get to the next day, more bunnies. The next day, more bunnies. Let's see. I was in 19,
Oh my God,
20,
this
21st.
is so weird.
We get to the 21st. So Egyptian in a past life, bought my Azurite stone. Last day in Europe, and I've been traveling with these people for about 11 days, so we're just kind of like, this is our last day here. I'm gonna go off to the museum by myself. Just the British Museum is free. I'm gonna go check it out because we were still in London, and my friend Jared tags along. He was like my best friend, and while we're on the bus to go to the museum, I pull up a browser, and the very top banner of the British Museum website says British Museum, home of the Rosetta Stone. And I was like, oh, shoot, I'm about to see the Rosetta Stone. I wonder if I'm going to turn into a ball of light and float into the sky, or just like, blood's going to start spraying out of my eyes, or like if I'm going to go off like a bomb, or I'll be triggered like some kind of like MK Ultra, warrior or something. Like I was like, uh-oh, this is cool. So it's all I can think about. It's like you're going to a party and your crush is going to be there, and you're just like, you're not even thinking about the party anymore. You're just like, oh my God, I'm going to see my crush. So the whole time we're at this museum, I didn't care what we were looking at. I was just like, oh my God, the Rosetta Stone's downstairs. So we're wandering around, no bunnies at this point. And finally I was like, okay, let's do it. We're going to do it. I had like spent a lot of time like looking at other Egyptian stuff, and there's like a longer version of the story where I was in there just like, oh, this is crazy and this makes sense and blah, blah, blah. I go downstairs and I see off in the distance, just surrounded by tourists, because it's, it's the Rosetta Stone. There it is. And I was like, this is the moment. And I start like, slowly stomping towards it. And I like am ready for whatever experience I'm going to have. And I walk up to it. Nothing happens. I read the thing about it. I take a picture of it. I'm like, oh, cool. I was kind of relieved that I didn't just blow up and die or something, It was just very...
two rabbits like The Shining, like,
yes.
Come hop with us.
Come along, follow me into traffic. And I'm like, no. So I do that, and I was relieved. I was just like, okay, cool. Oh God, I don't have to, as if any type of spiritual experience is something that you have to show up for and is actually up to you, and not just something that you find yourself inside of. So I I take the photo of it, go upstairs, and we were getting ready to leave. And then I was like, you know what? We've got 15 minutes. Let's look at one more thing. I asked Jared when he wants to see. He says samurais. They're in the back. I was like, cool. We start heading towards the back. And right before we enter into like the Asia area, I turn to the left and I look, and there on the wall is my exact tattoo illustration of Peter Rabbit in a wall of hieroglyphics. It's a whole wall of hieroglyphics. And then in the middle is this giant picture of Peter Rabbit, and it's the exact picture that I had gotten tattooed on me. And I was like, in what world does Peter Rabbit have to do with ancient Egypt? Why is Peter Rabbit that I have tattooed on me in the context of these hieroglyphics? So I like hit Jared. I was like, dude, we got to explore this right now. What is going on? So we walk in, and it's the gift shop. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Not really. We walk in, and sure enough, I find the table, and there it is. There's Peter Rabbit, the book, the original book by Beatrix Potter. And it's written all in hieroglyphics, but the cover of the book is the exact bunny, the exact illustration I had gotten of Peter Rabbit. And then directly next to it on the left side of it is a journal of Alice in Wonderland, and the cover of it is the white rabbit, the exact illustration I had tattooed on myself. So to my right,
oh my God.
And though that represents exactly the duality I had gotten, where one was a homeostasis, an origin, it was Egyptian Peter Rabbit, and then the other one was a spirit of adventure, the white rabbit. It was a journal, and it was my tattoo, and it was exactly in line with my two tattoos. Here's Peter Rabbit, here's the white rabbit. Hold on a second, I'm gonna go get them.
That's a crazy story.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't even know what to make of this. It's wild.
So here's Peter Rabbit, all in hieroglyphics, and then right next to it is the White Rabbit, and it's a journal. And it was just like this moment of just like the intersection of this
It's
weird
like
past life
transcended, dude.
moment. It was crazy. I felt like my heart started racing. Almost started crying. I felt like I was going to throw up. I thought that the whole building was going to collapse. I thought I was going to die. I have a video of this moment. I pulled out my camera and filmed the whole thing, and I was just like, this is insane. And that was the beginning of this whole unfolding of what I call the divine love letter. And I just developed this really intense relationship with these rabbits, and they started showing up, and it just got really, really weird. And honestly, really sweet and really wonderful. And like I was saying, there was like a new kind of object for this romance that I felt and this love that I felt. And it's evolved into so much more. But yeah, so
That's
that
incredible,
is
man. I'm
bizarre.
so glad
it's
you
super
took us
bizarre.
down that road. All right,
Yeah.
so is the book that you were talking about writing? Is it your experience with this, the story of this, like
It's
kind of
so
how it affected you and stuff, long form?
yeah, it's the beginning of a series I'm doing. Right now I'm planning 2 books. One is the Divine Love Letter. The second one is called I Survived a Gorgeous Tranquility, and which was like something I oh, I have so many fun stories I would love to tell
We're
you
gonna have to
guys
have you
about
back
this.
on, dude. This
Yeah,
is
there's
crazy.
so many fun stories like
You have a
exactly
lot.
like this, and they happen every day now. And but the book is essentially about all the miracles I experienced growing up, and kind of in the context of the Christian church and my parents, and then that all leading into my experience of discovering these and my bunnies and then all the chapters that started to unfold after that. I mean, to tell you guys, just to make myself to confirm that I sound crazy, is I drove from Ohio to Denver, Colorado because they told me to. And sure enough, when I got there, I found way more than I bargained for. It was wild. So I've got a whole slew of fun stories that are all going to be kind of in this series of books, and how it's really affected. It's led me on this journey that has ultimately led me back to this place now where I have come full circle. I am like in love with Jesus, and like, have this wonderful understanding of what it is to like lead a life of love, and throwing just absurd egoic judgment out the window, and just like, and assuming this just wanting to learn more and be curious, and I don't know, it's just exciting. This is just like, this was the excitement that I needed post Christianity to keep
Yeah, for
the
sure.
ball rolling, because I want to help people. I love people. That was always one of the greatest benefits of being in the church, was this opportunity to serve. And
You know who was another whimsical guy that saw rabbits every day was Richard Chase.
really, I've got to look
Yeah.
this up. Did he go crazy and kill
Google
people, or?
Vampire of Sacramento.
Oh wow, yeah, he was a killer, wasn't he? Look at
He had a
this.
different relationship with rabbits, but they were important to him as well.
This is
Yeah,
so
okay.
fascinating. Yeah, the
It's a really
Dracula
terrible
killer.
story, to be honest. It has nothing to do with anything.
Oh my
Easter
god.
probably has a new significance for you then. More like Easter bunny centric than than risen Christ.
Yeah, totally like going back that way. It's super funny around Easter though, because bunnies start showing up everywhere, and I'm just like, ah.
Dude, okay.
man.
I have to ask you about one thing
Please.
before we go. So I'm a fan of yours. I'm a only fan of yours
Oh, okay.
now. So you like, I know so many people who have OnlyFans, but I don't think I've ever met a man who has an OnlyFans account. What has that been like, and how did you get started on that? And like, I'm so curious. Like, everybody that I know that does OnlyFans is a girl. So
Right. You know what? That's a really interesting question, because I didn't really think about that until I started mine. I was like, because me and a bunch of my friends who have OnlyFans, we all gave each other like subscriptions so we could like boost each other. And then I just realized I just now had a social feed of just tons of naked pictures of my female friends. And I was like, I guess, I mean, we're all participating in this together. So it wasn't like weird, but we're all just like gassing each other up like, yo, you look awesome. but as a dude and going into that, it goes way back. I used to get in trouble when I was like 7 for drawing pictures of naked people, and I would always say the devil made me do it, you know.
Good answer.
And well, I mean, it's probably
Puberty
true. I don't know.
demon.
Puberty demon, hormones make me do it. And you know, I wanted to. This was when I was in high school. I was like, I think I want to be a porn star when I grow up. It was just one of my many fleeting thoughts, but it felt fairly significant. So then, getting into this place where like I'm really. We didn't really touch on this very much, but it's a huge part of my story. Was I went from drinking a lot and having this very damaged relationship with myself to this incredibly healing pivot that took place when I was 26, and I started to get into wellness, nutrition, and the byproduct of this change in relationship with myself was my body started to take shape, like in a really powerful way that was appealing. I guess, you know, it started to look great naked, I guess. And so I was like, you know what, I want to show this off, and I want to, you know, put this out there, because it's like there was a part of me that like enjoyed that kind of connection with people, you know. It's like more of a kind of a sexual connection, I guess. So yeah, I started an OnlyFans. I haven't really kept up with it. It was like there was like a nice like spurt at the beginning of the year where I was just like, yep, here's me, you know, posing tastefully naked and whatever. And the experience has been, I don't make nearly as much money as my female friends, and and you know, I don't know. It's been fun, and see, it's like my demographic is. I mean, I'm bisexual, and a lot of the people that do subscribe are, you know, also bisexual or homosexual, and it's like, yeah. I mean, it's just like it's interesting than what I've been formerly used to participating in, which is just a bunch of horny dudes gawking at a girl, you know. So it's like, oh, you know, I'm making myself kind of I'm objectifying, I'm commodifying myself in a way, but I don't feel like that has to be a bad thing. Like it's fun, and it's something I'm proud of, and yeah, it's been a learning experience, because like I said, it was like I had all these curiosities growing up, and I was like, now's my opportunity to kind of dip my toes into, like, I guess what, you know, would be categorized as sex work. And it's you know, you can imagine how you will feel in a scenario until you're actually in it. Then you're just like, oh, I had no idea I would react this way. It's the classic battle between the mind and the heart. So in my mind, I was like, this will be fun. Then in my heart, I had a few times when I was like, you know what, I really don't want to be showing this much of myself off. I really want to make this more special. Not saying it was making it not special, but you know, it's like, if you only get to see somebody once a year, it's special when you see them that one time. But if you see them every day, you just kind of forget about them. You know, you're like, oh, that's just my neighbor, rather than you know, going to
my
see
neighbor who walks out naked in his back lawn every single day. It was like weird at first, a little taboo. Now it's just like,
no, it's normal.
There it is. This is part of my life. It comes with the house.
They call him Naked Nick, my neighbor. Yeah. It's crazy. Funny guy.
That could be fun or dark. It goes either way. My wife she does OnlyFans.
That's awesome.
That's part of how she makes her living, you know. And I was curious, like, it's a constant back and forth, you know, for women in that line of work and stuff like that. Like, people overstepping boundaries, people being disrespectful, people doing things that are obviously like, it's, you know, you start to get the sense that's like, oh, you enjoy making someone uncomfortable or putting this out there on someone and seeing their reaction and stuff in a disrespectful way. Like, have you experienced that as a man, or is it, do you think the dynamic's a lot different?
You know, my audience that's participated with OnlyFans has been relatively small. So I've been lucky enough to also, surprisingly, I don't know, online, I just have a generally like very like supportive, respectful following. and then same with like people that were on OnlyFans. So I haven't gotten like any terribly like disrespectful requests or anything like that. I have had a few people like message me just like, hey, it's cool paying for your nudes. Do you care if I send you one? And I'm like, maybe not. You know, but it's never gotten nothing's ever gotten really ugly. But I can imagine that if I was doing it at a larger scale, then yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see that behavior show up all the time. And it's not. Oh, it's tricky.
Yeah, incels seem to be a straight crowd by and large too. So
Yeah,
I feel like they're a part of the problem demographic.
Yeah, I have a friend who's like who kills it on OnlyFans, and you know, I was asking her for advice, and she was like, you know, I would collaborate with you, but you're a dude, and my fans would hate that. And I was like,
I'm trying to picture them in the scenario, not somebody else taking the place that they wish they had.
yeah, right, exactly. Oh man, but yeah, it's been something that I've been wanting to push back more into and put more of a structure around, because I just, you know, as I could go on, I mean, you know, a year and a half ago, I was the music director at a video game studio, and then a few months later, I was the manager of, you know, 2 world record holding power lifters, and then I became a personal trainer myself, and now I take pictures of Dungeons and Dragons products. So
You've done a lot, man.
That's a lot of different fan bases.
A lot of things. So I'm trying to just like kind of narrow down and focus on a few things and put some structures around it. So OnlyFans will be one of those things because it's fun.
Okay. Man,
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, dude, this was so much fun talking to you. I mean, I had a couple of questions written down, and taking us down your rabbit trail. I guess I was like, you know, I wanted to get back into how you perceived miracles as a kid. It's like you answered all my questions. One of the few times I got nothing to double back on, nothing to follow up on. So
cool.
Thanks so much for sharing that story. I honestly, you even talking about having another story definitely makes me want to do this again sometime.
God, so many stories. I've recently gotten back into practicing a lot of like prophecy and even healing and all of that, and it's been crazy. It's been amazing. It's been beautiful, and it's like, you know, like I said, it was like the big struggle has not just been like it's been recontextualizing the magic, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love the posture you have. The looking back, I mean, even the way you think about and talk about your upbringing, even the parts that aren't good, recognizing that it's part of your journey. It sounds so healthy. It sounds like you're in such a great place, and thanks so much for talking with us and sharing.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Let's direct people to what you got going on.
Oh man, you can find me all across the board. I pop up here and there on different things. I've got poetry books you can find at secretmidnightpress.com. I am mostly hanging out on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter, occasionally getting on there and tweeting something that probably doesn't make sense. And then I'm also on TikTok, or you just email me. Just contact Cale at gmail.com. That's Gmail. Sorry.
Well,
yeah, at Jamal.com.
At Jamal.com.
Well, thanks for being a part of this episode, man. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to seeing what's next for you. I mean, you're headed in an upward direction, so it's fun. You're a vibrant person.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so
Whimsical.
much. Whimsical, yes. Oh man,
whimsical.
If that shows up on my grave, I would be so. If it just said absurd and whimsical, that's all I want. Nonsensical is my. But yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. You know, I feel like there's so much more we could talk about. So yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.